Welcome, friends. Welcome back to the hangar. Today, I wanted to talk about my survival bag. For the last year, I've been flying Mike Victor uniform, and I've struggled a little bit with the survival bag as to what I should have in it and when I actually need to carry it. So I wanted to talk about that today. But first, I wanted to talk about operational and emergency equipment that needs to be in the airplane regardless of the survival bag. And that's things like a fire extinguisher that lives between the seats here on board the aircraft. This is the recommended fire extinguisher for this airplane. You also have to have a first aid kit, and that first aid kit is in a dry bag. It lives attached to the webbing right behind the seats. Easy to reach behind the seats, grab it, and use it if you need to. You're supposed to have things like a timepiece. When I'm flying, there's always, 2 or 3 timepieces in front of me at all times. On my iPad, on the panel, my telephone is usually here. All of those things are a clock. I don't necessarily wear a watch anymore, and I probably should when I fly. Bit of a gray area considering how many other clocks are in the aircraft. Not to mention the analog clock here down on the panel. You're also supposed to have a flashlight if you're taking off or landing at night or flying at night. There's always a flashlight, and it is Velcroed right here to the post. It's always there. Then there's other things like you're supposed to have charts and all of those things. All of that is covered. What I really want to talk about is my survival bag. And so let's talk about the survival kit. Now, I'm only going to talk about the survival kit for this aircraft, the aircraft that I fly. Cessna 172, land aircraft, only lands and takes off on wheels from the ground, no water operations. We're not going to talk about over water operations either. It's not a commercial aircraft, blah, 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 blah. It's obviously not a helicopter. So I'm only going to concentrate on what I need for this specific aircraft. And I'll read right from the cars. I'll throw the cars up on the screen so that you can look yourself. Survival equipment, flights over land. You need something to start a fire, something to provide shelter, something to purify water, and something to visually show that you're in distress. So like a strobe light or something like that. But for this aircraft, I don't need a survival kit if I'm flying within 25 nautical miles of my departure airport. So if I fly from Oshawa and stay within 25 nautical miles, don't need a survival kit. If I have a radio, which obviously I have a radio because you can't fly in and out of Oshawa without having a radio. You also don't need it if the aircraft is operated in a geographical area where and at a time of year when the survival of the persons on board is not jeopardized. Super vague. I kind of take that to mean that the whole area from sort of Windsor to Montreal along the 401 Highway 20 corridor from May to October, you don't need a survival bag. Pretty much the entirety of southwestern Ontario, you probably wouldn't need a survival bag. You're going to go down in someone's backyard. You're going to go down in someone's farm. There's always going to be someone around who will see you. There's cell phone reception if you absolutely need it, but that's not something that you should rely on. Definitely not something that you should rely on. And so I'm going to open this up. We'll see what's inside. I do want to say that I look at my survival bag as a checklist item, a walk-around checklist item, something that I look at and say, okay, where am I flying today? What is the weather like? Is it in the wintertime? Is it in the summertime? What do I think I'm going to need? And I will work with the bag and change what's inside. And some of this stuff is stuff that I will change at annual as well. Just because it shouldn't sit in the bag for years and years and years and years. It needs to be refreshed. So, top of the bag, something that is not on the list of actual things that you need, and that is a little bit of food and milk. I like tea. I like to have milk. I like milk with me at all times. So I've got a thing of milk, and I've got these Mr. Noodles. There's other food in here. We'll get to that in a moment. But these are things that, okay, so I put myself through university by working in the bush in Northern Ontario. I spent a lot of time, I went through a lot of survival training. I went through a lot of times where I was in the bush by myself for a couple weeks at a time waiting for the airplane to pick me up and take me to the next spot. not strictly necessary, not horribly nutritious, but it puts a smile on my face. And when you're in a distressful situation, putting a smile on your face, I think is sort of important, keeps your spirits up. Next, I have paracord. Paracord certainly goes towards the idea of building yourself a shelter. I have a strobe, which goes under the signaling device, something that you need, absolutely should be in here. This is a waterproof pouch filled with waterproof matches, starting a fire. More paracord. Forks and spoons for our food. This is a jet boil, so a small gas stove that has an integrated pot and cup and stuff for boiling water. And along with that, I do carry the gas canisters. This pouch, did I say at the beginning? This pouch is 23 pounds. Mike Victor uniform, Cessna 172, doesn't have a back seat, doesn't have an interior. I've got over 1,000 pounds of useful load. I've got so much volume in this aircraft that I don't really have to think too hard about paring it down for weight considerations or space considerations. Obviously, if you're in a Vans RV, something or other, low wing, you're going to attack this completely differently than I do. Look, another Mr. Noodles. Okay. A knife. Have to have a knife and another signaling device. This is a mirror. It's got a hole in the middle so that you can look at what you're signaling and you get a glint off of the sun. Backup, because you know battery things don't always work. This requires no batteries. It's simple. Simple is often the best. We didn't talk about this. This is my pouch for providing water. Inside here is a water purification kit and water purification tablets. So I can both run the water through a filter, but I can also use these tablets to purify the water if need be. I'm gonna move these noodles down to the floor. And I'm looking for suggestions too, because as I work through this, I'm trying to figure out exactly what I should have in here, and if I can sort of focus it a little bit more. I think the fact that I do have so much space and I have the no weight limitation really, that I've just sort of repeated a lot of things that maybe I didn't need to. So, this is a saw. Wait, press the button. This is a saw, something that if you're both building shelter and trying to build a fire, a saw is really important. A small shovel. You might laugh, but this is something that comes in very handy when you're stuck in the bush. Having a shovel, a small little shovel like that. Leather gloves. Again, leather gloves are something that not necessarily fully 100% necessary, but you find that your hands get chewed up really quickly if you're digging or using a saw and building fires. Wearing a pair of gloves is handy. So I've got a couple pairs of gloves in here because often Julie is my co-pilot. I'm not going to talk about that. Okay, protein bars. This is more where the actual food value is in the protein bars. And I've got beef jerky in order to keep things going. I've got little beef sausages because I think these are things that I enjoy eating, but they provide that nutrition. Again, things that are changed during the annual, once a year, renewed, definitely renewed. Tea bags and sugar, because I do love a cup of tea, and if I'm sitting out there waiting for someone to come and rescue me, a cup of tea is important. These are two small little sleeping bags, bivy sacks. Very important. Even in the summertime, very important. And this is something where in the wintertime, if I was flying somewhere where I really needed to have a survival bag, I'd be throwing in two full-size sleeping bags, winter sleeping bags, because I think that's important. Farther down, oh, More food. Sardines, smoked fish, canned fish, high in protein, tasty, really enjoy it. Something that I need. This is a Siege stove. So I've got this gas stove, but this is a stainless steel fold down stove that you put together, and you can cook on it and it provides heat. Just sort of a backup. Again, this is something that can fail. This can't fail. As long as you've got a little bit of firewood around, which you're going to have lots of if you go down in Ontario or Quebec, you can build a fire in this, contain it, and cook or heat water. Candles. Definitely need candles. This is another fire starter. So this is a fire starter that is a flint in case the matches. Redundancy. I love redundancy. Another signaling mirror. This one's a little bit larger. This is part of the Siege stove. Another signaling beacon, definitely something that flashes. A whistle. A whistle is useful. You might not think so, but a whistle is useful. And a tarp. So the tarp, the matches or the fire starter, signaling mirror, and the water purification, this is all you need. This keeps you inside the regulations. The rest of this stuff is just stuff that I think you should have based on the training that I've gone through, the survival training that I've gone through over the years. I think it's very important that you have something to munch on, something to eat, something to keep your energy up. Could be 72 hours before someone finds you. Also in the aircraft during the winter, I have an avalanche shovel. An avalanche shovel is something that is very important. If you end up in deep snow, one of the best types of shelters that you can build is a quinzhee. And this is something that you really need to build a quinzhee. Super easy to build, and once you get inside, really nice and cozy and warm. Inside the plane, I also have just the basket of regular stuff. So there's tie-down ropes. Those tie-down ropes play into building a shelter. I also carry a Garmin InReach inside the cabin and a battery-powered handheld radio inside the cabin. These are always in the plane. These are things that, you know, the batteries get updated and changed regularly to make sure that they're always fit for service. So what do you carry in your kit? What's in the back of your plane? What are the regulations where you live? What do you need to carry? Is it something that you just have tossed in the back of the plane and you forget about? Often, if I'm flying in Southern Ontario, this is in the extended baggage back here, and I don't really think too much about it. But when I fly to Northern Ontario and to Northern Quebec, the survival bag gets moved right up here, right behind the seat, because I think it's important, something that you can pull out and run away with.